it's time to start marking on the panels, and order is important. So the sill beam goes in first, the lintel goes in second, and that's going to be supported by the corner posts. There's a join in the centre, because that would simply be being too long to make as a single piece. The trees simply don't grow that tall. Anything that did grow that tall will be wanted for masts for the Navy. And then the extra pillars go in between the sill beam and the lintel. They are supported, and then those panels are divided up. Now, I discovered that if I draw in the lines, impress the lines I should say, with my pencil on a slope, I actually get that ridge, that little bit of rounding off, chamfering. Probably chamfering is the word there, that the plasterers actually do. I don't know if they did that in medieval times, but on the buildings that I've looked at that have been plastered and repaired and done up many times over the centuries, they always seem to tuck in a little groove there for tidiness. Sometimes it works, sometimes the pencil sort of judders a bit, which is not quite so good. But I still like the effect, because you remember that we're trying without sticking extra bits on the outside, which is the mistake that so many makers do, because they just don't look like that. It's really important to, having been arrogant enough to say, no, everybody's doing it wrong, this is the way you do it. The pitter patter petter is my dog again, who sometimes when I get up and start talking decides something's happening that involves him. Essential to really gauge whether or not this has been a success or a failure is to gauge whether or not this looks like two different materials. That's also why I'm going to be using black acrylic paint or dark brown acrylic paint for the timbers, and the more matte paint of a very different chemistry for the wattle and daub timbers. It has to look like it's different materials, even though they are approximately flush. Let's just show you how that works on here, doing it one-handed. Yeah, you can see sometimes it works, sometimes it judders. Sometimes you can push back along the line. Yeah, that works quite well. Except that very last one is going to be a single piece, because that's going to be the main door. D-O-R-R, door. You can tell I'm tired. Correct the spelling. Distracted away from working on the timber frame parts again. Now that's coming on to work on the base, and that's all painted black with Mod Podge, but there are a few little pieces that sort of get missed, little white specks and bits that don't quite look right. We just can't get the brush in when you're working on vertical surfaces, so it's time to spray with that, and where that hits areas that the Mod Podge hasn't quite touched, it will erode the foam a little bit, but that'll be okay. It might give me some interesting, slightly bubbly effects. I've started undercoating this with the flesh colour as well. But definitely mask on for spraying, even though I'm outside. Well, actually, because the paint clogged up. Very annoying. It's also just a little bit blowy out there. So that's a decision of either buying a new tin of paint, and the stuff is expensive, or cleaning the nozzle out, which is sometimes possible to do with a very fine blade or a little bit of fuse wire and some solvent like white spirit, but sometimes you can spend 20 minutes doing that and then it clogs. I've made a decision, well, rather two. When I first conceived this project, which is probably well over a year ago, because I've been working on it for 10 months, it was as an art piece, something I would try to put in for the Rugby Open exhibition, which is my local fine art exhibition, and to use it as a Dungeons and Dragons playing tool to make it a playable space. Well, the Rugby Open comes up in 2 months. That's the application form, and I've been working on it for most of the year, planning it for longer. I'm not going to finish it in 2 months. So, as I've been suspecting for a very long time, right from the start really, it's not going to be a 1 year project, it's going to be a 2 year project. But it's good to sort of finally decide that, set that in stone, foam stone, as a definite decision, and I can breathe a big sigh and relax and just slow down a little bit. And I really don't want to have to rush it and work around the clock for the next 2 months and end up with something I'm not so pleased with. And the second decision that I've made is, as I'm not finding enough time to work on it, I've doing some of the details, and I'm ready perhaps to start cutting out the door and window spaces or something next, is I've decided that I'm not going to make it as a sectional model. If it's ever going to get used as an actual playable piece of tabletop terrain, then that will be in maybe 18 months time, when it's hopefully been exhibited and hasn't sold, and then I think, what am I going to do with it now? And then I'm going to make it playable. And if I do, if that happens, then I will cut it. But for the building, it's going to be much easier to make it solid, not to have to muck about with making all the layers come off, which is possible, but much harder. So it's going to be much more fun, really, to glue the ground floor down onto the foundation stones, and then I'll be able to muck about filling in those gaps with other stones or with wattle or whatever I decide I'm going to fill those gaps with, glue it all together, and then at a later stage, if I ever decide I do want to detail and model the inside, then I'll cut it either with a knife or with a hot wire, and then take it from there. But to begin with, it's going to be a model appreciated as a thing to look at. On the doors, been really looking forward to working on the doors. So I've made templates. These two little cardboard templates fit the doors, because I'm working in a different location today, so I didn't want to bring the whole model with me. And just cutting up some wide lolly sticks, what they call tongue depressors. Dentists use them, and I'm just cutting up with the Dremel, and this particular bit, which is the wood cutting bit, it works like a sort of miniature circular saw. Doors for size, sort of hidden back door. This is going to be the more presentable one. Obviously it needs some more detailing, but I'm kind of pleased with the rustic look. It's detailed on the back, just in case I ever decide to develop the inside of the building. I'll show you the detailing size, the detailing stage of that before too long. Ordered one or two. I've ordered some little rings for door handle. They're on their way from eBay. I don't know, maybe China. On the side, and I'm skipping up about ahead here to the second layer. Sometimes while I'm thinking, sometimes while other things are drying. This area was quite damaged just from when I originally cut out the blocks, and this was going to be an area where I showed some exposed wattle where the building had ripped away from the one next to it, and the wattle and door wall had lost most of its wattle and maybe been exposed by the weather. And you do see that in some of the pictures of timber frame buildings that haven't been restored. Not so much these days, because timber frame buildings in England tend to get looked after. I've seen a few pictures of ones in Germany and France which are in a very, very bad state of repair, and you do see pictures of ones from the 1960s and 70s which were falling down. Some of them were saved and some of them were torn down, and I've had to cut that section out that I just showed you, because it was pretty damaged, and actually do what I wasn't going to do, which is build a piece of frame. And then you can see here the bottom beam and the top beam have been cut in half lengthways, and I've stuck in these pieces of grass. This is just seed grass cut from there around the edges of the lawn, and stuck in to represent hazel rods. I had a go at doing this once many years ago when I was teaching with 9 and 10-year-olds. We went to a place called the Charles Moore Partnership Centre in Coventry, where kids could have a go at building a wattle and door wall and learn about how timber frame buildings were constructed. Coventry at the time being a lot prouder of its heritage and funding things like that, and we learnt how to do it. So it's an oak frame, and then it's hazel rods, and then in between the hazel rods there is thinner, more flexible hazel or willow, just threaded through to make like sort of basket work. And I'll show you how this works when that glue's dried. I'll reconstruct those beams. It will look like those rods have gone into holes. It took hard work on the wrists and fingers, I seem to remember, to bend those all those pieces of hazel and willow into place. Well, it's after midnight again, and I'm thinking I'd just like to get a little bit of work done on this every day, even if it's only 20 minutes in the middle of the night. This is the frame, and it's had to be glued and repaired several times because it was a really crumbly old bit of foam, and I've started painting it. Now I'll show you on the main model next time how this grey paints, which I've coloured sampled by looking at one particular building in Coventry. The base colour for the old faded oak is this grey, and it's ever so similar to the original grey of the foam. So I'm painting grey foam with grey paint, and looks distinctly different when it's dry, but when it's wet it's very hard to see where the paint's been and where you haven't, where it hasn't been. And this is the grass, which I've had to paint in brown to look like hazel, because when you actually see exposed wattle, or original wattle, it sort of has its original colour. They leave the bark on it. This is all the grass that's actually been in a bowl of water for several days. Well, it's not very flexible, but it should just about should just about twist in. And this is just experimenting, making it up as I go along. I don't know how long that's going to have to be. I really don't want this to look like just cocktail sticks, because someone's probably watching this and saying, oh, you could have done that with just cocktail sticks. Well, I didn't. I went to a lot of trouble to get grass, so it's quite hard to weave it in. I think that's going to work. I hope it's not going to break. It might do. Yeah, it's going to be a long fiddle to do that, but that's the basic process, and then it will be fixed on the back with Mod Podge or varnish or something. The weaving is over, under, and then the next line will be the other way around. I'll try to show you when it's finished. For 20 minutes, that's taken an hour, but I'm quite pleased with the look of it. Before I go on and do the other side, I can't believe how long that's taken. Before I go on and do the other side, I'm going to have to stick a bit of Mod Podge on the back of it just to tack it together. Otherwise, this side is going to come unravelled as I try to do the basket work on that side. That's going to be a job for another day. The first one cut out for the simple ones, for the plainish back door. I want to distinguish which is the sort of almost hidden away back door, and that's the drawing out for the front door. It's actually simpler than the what I'm copying, but cutting that out with the tip of the scalpel blade is going to be just a case of patience and time and listening to a good podcast. Didn't take too long really. The secret is definitely a sharp blade. I wouldn't want to use that blade again for this kind of work. Now I need to work out how these rings are going to go, and some sort of lock plate, because I've noticed that most of the really old doors tend to have quite large plates behind the rings. They're coming on. Quite pleased with the effects so far. This is just a little black acrylic paint. I'll try and make that more gunmetal-y later on, and just a little bit of very, very dilute black acrylic paint as a wash. What colour is old wood, folks? It's grey. It's not brown. Every example I look at, it's grey. Sometimes there's kind of little hints of brown, and somehow that's a tongue depressor, so it's made out of pine, the same colour as those bits of those cocktail sticks there. Somehow the black wash has kind of brought some of the brown out in it. I should put some more washes on, but I need to sort of exercise restraint and just put in as little brown as possible. The studs are going to be tricky. I may have to take this when it's dried, when it's gluing at the moment. I may have to take that away and drill holes, because those pinheads are a bit large, and when you cut them off with a pair of these pliers, I can't remember what they're called, but they're designed to cut really close, cut shear. When you cut the heads off, there's a cut-off head there. It's still rather sort of globular. It's not just a hemisphere that you can stick on flat. So I'm gonna. I think I may have to drill some tiny little holes, and then set the heads of the pins into them, or find another way of doing it. Another way of doing it might be to actually make a kind of mould with the green stuff, and then make little green stuff hemispheres, which is going to be incredibly fiddly. But they're coming on.